Our subject today is communication. Communication. Before we handle the subject of communication, I want to read to you the text for marriage. Anybody knows the text for marriage in the Bible? In the book of Genesis, which text is it? Anybody knows? Genesis 2, verse what? And man shall leave his parents and shall be united with his wife, and then the two shall become one flesh. In that passage, let me read it. It is Genesis chapter 2, and you can read verse 24. That is why a man leaves. So the first verb there is leave. Somebody asked a question, what does that mean? It means that a marriage is a family is a distinct unit. There must be a separation. There is a social, legal dimension to marriage. That's why you cannot just go and stay with someone and you say you're married. No, there must be a leaving his father and mother and be united with his wife. I'm reading NIV. Those who have King James, the word which NIV says is united is cleave, okay, with his wife, and they become one flesh. So there's living, there is cleaving, and there is becoming one flesh, okay? Today in communication, we want to emphasize this second verb, which is being united or cleaving. Cleaving simply implies that these two people who came from different families, they are different gender, they come together and they join in holy matrimony. Cleaving, to put it in a clearer term, is having intimacy in marriage. In fact, all the things that we'll discuss about marriage is just an amplification of what intimacy should be in marriage. And communication is one of the aspects by which you can enhance intimacy in marriage. We will discuss this in detail, but I don't know how you are communicating with your spouse. Is your communication at the level of weather? You know, the level of weather is ilinyesha, imenyesha sana leo. Hata kuna baridi nyingi. Then it's at that level. I want you to conduct a survey into your marriage. What is the level of your communication in marriage? I will come to that later on in our discussion, but does your communication go to the level of emotions? We communicate at different levels. At church here we are communicating. I have some office, I have some bosses, I communicate with them. But those levels of communication are different levels of communication. In marriage, communication should be on another level. A level that indicates that these people are intimate. These people are intimate. And God has made it good for us this afternoon to sit here and to learn how we can enhance communication in marriage. I know some families, and for sure several of my friends, they don't talk, they quarrel. So the man does not come to home early. Because if he goes to home early, any kind of talk is quarreling. And the wife, the man says, is a nagging wife. Can't say anything that does not hurt the man. And the man, when he's hurt, responds in the same way. There's a real breakdown of communication in that house. And that is some of the houses in which we live in. It is my prayer that in our marriages we learn this skill of communicating well with your spouse. Let me say just at the onset that if you communicate well in marriage, what it means is that you care. It's all about that. And that's what God intends us to have in our marriages. That's why the word cleave is in Genesis chapter 2, verse 25. It is a verb that implies that as you continue in marriage, day in, day out, you should come together and together and together, develop intimacy in marriage. Okay? I hope that as the song says, the longer I do what? The sweeter it. There's a song that goes like that. So the longer you stay in your marriage, the sweeter it should be. And the more you live together, the more you should be close to each other, even at the level of communication. So just a few things I will share with you that I think are key on this aspect of communication. And at the end, I would like you to share with me some of the things you think break down communication in our homes. Now, communication is a key aspect of marriage. Many marriages stand or fall because of communication. Let us say communication is one of the ways and the best way to express our love to our partners. When you love someone, you will communicate it. And if you cannot communicate it, then there is a problem. Now, here I've listed a few, some of the Bible principles on effective communication. I want us to read the first one in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 9. Can we read James, chapter 1, verse 9? A key principle in communication. The book of James, let me read it. And it is James, chapter 1, verse 9. Okay, did I get it right? Okay, 19, sorry. I wrote 9 as 19. 19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. It is 1:19. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. So the first principle in communication, some put this last. I see so many books on communication and they put this last. For me, this is the first. What does this text tell us? For you to communicate effectively is you being a good listener. I don't know whether it is the Chinese who said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we hear more than we say. So be a good listener. When I'm speaking and I see you listening to me, what does that communicate? It communicates that what you are saying to me is of value. Not only that what you are telling me is of value, what you are saying to me is that I am of value. And who doesn't like to be of value? Okay? And when you treat me like that, I will feel better. So the first principle in effective communication, we confuse communication with speaking. Communication is everything about you that says either through verbal or non-verbal something to the person that you are relating with. In fact, even if I'm passing you there and I'm going out there, the way I look at you, the way I react to you communicates. I will come to non-verbal later. But I want just to say that communication is not about speaking only. In fact, very little of it is about speaking. And so the best part of communication is being a good listener. Now, listening. I just have a few things I just want to read to you. You don't have to note them down. Powerful communicators are not those who know how to speak well, but those who know how to listen well. So you need to know also not the art of speaking, but the art of listening. I think that's where we fall most of the time. The art of listening. Because what does listening entail? It shows that you value, I mentioned that, you value the one who is speaking with you, you care about what he or she is expressing. Now, listening is not only listening to what your spouse is saying, but being observant and concerned about what she or he is expressing. You need to listen, not passively. It is active listening. You can listen and you are not actually listening. You are just keeping quiet. There is active listening. And what is active listening? You need to read the emotions. If there are emotions of joy, share the joy. If there are emotions of anxiety, get into it and empathize. If it is an emotion of happiness, get into that happiness. If your wife is sharing with you how the day was good, let me use that example. How should you react to that? You should say, honey, that's how it was. And that will make you a good listener. So, listening is not a passive thing. It is an active thing. Because you may not exactly interpret emotions, lovingly find out the reason for the emotion that you share with them. So if somebody is expressing, or she's talking, or is talking, and he or she is sharing an emotion, listening implies understanding, getting into her or his shoes to understand what he or she is going through. Now, let me say this, that if you listen, you will enhance communication in the home. Let us determine to effectively communicate in our families by listening to our spouses, and much more because we are parents. We need to listen to our children. I have teenagers. I married very late, so I still have some teenagers. And then I think it was the year 2014 or so, around 14 years. We had another boy. So I have somebody who is still young in the house. A very big gap. Those things happen in family. Some are finishing high school and another one has come. But I thank God because the house is very exciting. He's around, running around, and we are happy together. These young boys sometimes come with things that I am tired. Maybe I'm preparing a sermon or preparing a lecture, and he comes, Daddy, See this? Daddy, you know what happened? Now, is that useless or important? I am busy. I teach, so I'm preparing for a class. And sometimes a sermon. And then he intrudes with things that are, you may say, childish. Sometimes I sit, what do I do now? Do I continue preparing this, or do I handle this young man? Oh, sometimes I think I should tell him, man, I'm busy. Can you tell me this thing later on, or explain it later on? But I've realized that if I do that, I miss a great opportunity with this young man. Because now I know. Because I have teenagers. Teenagers don't speak. They answer what you are saying. And they lock up themselves in their what? Do you know them? You have them. They lock themselves up in their rooms. So I know if I don't spend time with this young man and speak with him, a time will come when I will want to speak with him and it is gone. So let's cherish those moments where we can speak even with our children. Let me talk about children first. Then I come to our spouses. My boys, these teenagers I'm talking about, you know, we had to buy some phones for them. Now when they are at home, it is phones all the time. If not phone, TV. We try to control, but I don't know how you are controlling. You'll help me with ideas on how you are controlling yours with phones. But I've realized that there are points where we are together. I like football. They also like football. I don't know where they took it from me. So just like Kenyan men, we have some teams in England. I don't know why Kenyan men support some teams in England. So we support, with one, we support Manchester United. With another, is supporting our rival, Manchester City. So sometimes we discuss football. So if I want to talk with them, I start with football. That's where we begin. I'm trying to get into their world. Otherwise, if I leave them in their rooms and with their phones all the time, I don't know what is happening. I'm trying to be close to them. Now with my wife, you know, let me come here and tell you now. Me, I don't speak much. I speak because I must. Like now I'm preaching, I must do what? I must speak. But my wife speaks too much. Too much. So I've learned to live with this woman. When she's speaking, I behave. And I want God to forgive me or help me to be a good listener. So when she's talking about, because women talk about a lot of things. Some I'm interested, some are not what? Interested. So I behave as if, forgive me, as if I am what? I am interested. Okay. I hope she's not watching. What can I do? I have to keep her company and be happy with her. She's the one I have. And by the way, I didn't mention it yesterday. Now, some of you are my friends here. I have even very close colleagues. But when things are thick, it is that woman I'm running to. That woman. That's why this thing we are discussing here is si mchezo. Family is not a joke. Family is the last place you go to. If I get sick and I am supposed to be washed, who will wash me? My wife. Okay? So please treat your spouse with a lot of respect. And let me also add, invest a lot in your family. because that's where you'll run to. If you don't invest heavily in your family, I don't mean spending a lot of money there, but a lot of time and emotions you should invest in your family. I will talk about time, spending time with your family at one point in this session. Now I'm talking about communication, and now I'm also trying in my family to enhance. So I need to be a good listener to this young man who runs to me and tells me, Daddy, see what we did in school. Daddy, you know today, or sometimes she is asking me, Daddy, where are you going? Daddy, I saw so and so. In his small mind, that thing is so important to him. And if I pay attention to him, the interpretation is, Daddy cares. And if a child grows with that, you've helped that child. And not only a child, if your woman or your husband knows that you care, you are helping a great deal that person. And therefore, communication, just as I said, shows that you care. One of the ways that you show that you care in communication is by being a good listener. Sometimes you are not in the mood of talking and your husband is talking. This is mostly with women. What is the point? You have interjected. The man is talking, okay? So what is your point? What are you trying to say? What he is saying is nonsense, isn't it? Amalizi haraka. You are not interested in listening to it. Let him cut the long story what? Short. Don't interrupt. That's one of the points that we have here. But let me go to the second one. Let me just list some of the effective ways of listening are, number one, don't interrupt when someone is speaking. Don't interrupt. Number two, give the person who is speaking undivided attention. Give the person who is speaking undivided what? Attention. Like now it is politics time, and sometime I want to watch the trend or the news on TV. But my wife is interested in other stories. So she wants to interject or talk to me when I'm watching my favorite program. How should I react? Is between that program and my wife, which one is important? Tell me, church, which was important? My wife is important. I need to stop watching even if it is news and then focus on what this lady is trying to say. Give the person who is speaking undivided attention. It is one thing to allow one to finish the talk, but you can do that without being engaged. So what are we saying? Don't interrupt, but above interrupting, get engaged. When you are engaged in what the other person is saying, you are attentively and actively listening. Number three, please check out to be sure that you understand what is being communicated. Yeah, you can interject and say, oh, it was like that. Then finally, on listening, be a good listener. A big percentage of communication problems will be solved. Let me tell you, if you go home today and reduce much of what you are saying and listen more to what your spouse is saying, even if she is or he is quarreling you, Just pretend that you are listening or really listen. It will sure solve a lot of problems in marriage. Number 2 in communication. Number 1 is being a good listener. Number 2 is openness and trust. Openness and trust. Most people that we meet throughout the day receive some communication. We ask for things and exchange some words with them. We may use even some formal communication. But in marriage relationship, we must be willing to communicate everything. We must be willing to communicate everything. I started by reading a verse. I read Genesis chapter 2 verse 24. And I said there are 3 verbs in that text, which is a text for marriage. And man shall live, and man shall cleave, and man shall become one flesh. I am talking about cleaving, okay? In cleaving is developing intimacy with your partner. And that's why we are talking about communication. And we've just talked about listening. The second point I am trying to talk about is being open and trusting your spouse. That will help a lot in marriage. If you are a person who is cagey, is a person who always is suspicious, you will make communication to be very difficult in that marriage because you approach everything with suspicion. Stop being suspicious. Yes, there are moments that can give you thoughts about being suspicious, and we'll discuss that in one of the lessons that we have here. But just don't be suspicious about everything. You think that your husband or your wife is having an affair all the time, you're checking out what is in the phone. Sometimes those things in the phone may bring you more problems. It's better to leave them, okay? Because you'll start asking so many questions. I am talking about you and your spouse having nothing between you, open to your spouse. I wish spouses that are here reached a level where there was nothing between them. That's what God intends. That they become ultimately one flesh. They are open with one another. If the husband is hurt, this woman will know it. If the woman is hurt, the husband will know it. Not hiding things from one another. There is a man who told us that in marriage there are conflicts. If you have time, we'll say a word or two about conflicts. Now, in conflicts, there are about 3 ways of going about them. One is giving in. One starts the quarreling and you give in. The other way is where you all want to win. It's a win-win or a lose-lose, you can say, situation. In both circumstances, if you go into a conflict and your attitude is that you must win, then there's a big problem. But if your attitude is that I may be wrong, and she could be wrong, you are in a win-win, or if you like, a lose-lose situation, and it makes marriage go. And what helps much in even the conflicts that we have is how we communicate when we are in conflict. So I wanted to share that point of openness. We must be open to one another. If we can bring a high level of openness in our marriage, then our marriages will be healthier. Think about it. If one part of the body held something back from another part, then there will be a problem even in the circulation. That doesn't mean everything you say to your spouse has to be deep and meaningful. It means that you shouldn't have secrets from one another. I know this is a difficult topic, Some have secrets from their spouses, and some hide things from their spouses. Should we have secrets? If we have an open session, one of the lessons we will be able to discuss that. I was in a family session like this, and we took husbands and spoke to husbands alone, and a husband raised the question. I wish we had a chance to discuss it here. My wife, when I give money to help people at home, somebody does not have fees, maybe I want to chip in at 2,000 or 3,000. Someone is sick, maybe I want to chip in something little here and there. My wife does not want. Ladies, why are you like that? Or some of you are not like that. My wife does not want. That was the question of this man. So this man said, me, I find it very peaceful to send money to these people secretly. He was telling us. And some men agreed in that congregation that sometimes you can send some money secretly without your wife doing what? But here I'm talking about not having any secret between you. The big question is, should we have any secrets that we are keeping to ourselves? It is my prayer, because this thing is a process, that we reach a level where there are no secrets that we hold against each other. Now, I just want to list to you some levels of communication before we go to the next item. Levels of communication. You can list this. Number one is chit-chat. You're chit-chatting. There are no emotions involved. You're just chit-chatting, talking. Number two, you can communicate reporting events. You can communicate reporting events. Number three, and men do this most of the time, communicating ideas and information. Sometimes men would like to discuss politics and so on and so forth. Number four, sharing feelings. Sharing feelings. And then number five, open and intimate communication. Our marriages should be at level 4 and 5. Level 4 and 5, where we share feelings and are open and intimate. A high level of communication for marriages and families is the open and intimate, mature communication. At this level, couples or families are honest with each other, disagree without being disagreeable, and express personal feelings. So, the first thing in enhancing our communication is being a good listener. The second thing in enhancing our communication is being free, open, and intimate with your spouse. Now, the third thing about communication is verbal communication, or if you like, how to speak, if you like. I want us to read a few texts together because the Bible has a lot to say about speech. We'll first read Proverbs 25 verse 11. I'll read Proverbs 25 verse 11 for you. Proverbs 25. Let me read it. Proverbs. Sorry, did I say 25? Yes, 25 verse 11. In my version it says, like apples of gold in setting of silver is ruling rightly given. This does not give it correctly. Anybody has King James? Anybody has King James to read for us? Yes. Good. Words fitly spoken are like apples of gold in settings of silver. Now, that's a very good picture indeed. An apple placed on some silver plate. That's a beautiful thing. In short, what that passage is saying, if you speak correctly, it is beautiful. Okay? So let's learn on how to speak nicely. The word that is key in that passage is words. Does that passage say fitly spoken? Fitly spoken, implying right words and at the right time. Right words and at the right times. You can even sometimes say the right words, but wrong what? Wrong time. So you need to have the right words at the right time. Let us read Proverbs 15, verse 1. I think there's a beautiful message there for speaking. A gentle answer turns away wrath. A gentle answer turns away wrath. Where's our lady who is a colporter? I was once a colporter too. So one time I was given a story, and I think I've met some instances like that too. There was this literature evangelist who went to sell books to a certain house. And when he knocked the door, the lady had woken up in a bad mood and did not want to be disturbed in the morning. There were these rough ladies. And so the man knocked, and when the lady opened the door, the man started introducing himself. And the lady had some milk in her hand in a cup. Was discarded by this man. Go away. Why are you disturbing me in the morning? And the milk poured on the man's face. The man licked some of that milk and said, "Lady, you could have given it to me in a cup." That turned around the anger of that lady. What type of a man is this? I'm doing something bad to him, and he's responding gently, lovingly. And that's what the scripture says. A gentle answer turns away anger. Practice this in your marriage. By the way, we need Adventists and Christians, we need not have so many problems in our homes, because the answer is already here. If we just applied some of the things that we are reading this afternoon, there'll be less friction at home. If your husband comes home and is roaring all around, why don't you lower your voice and say, "Honey, is there anything?" Than becoming rough too and answering back, "Don't disturb us. We are also stressed." Now, if you say that, you are igniting fire in that home. But if you just lowered your voice and said, "Honey, is there anything? Okay, honey, what is it? Honey, how was the day?" It changes totally the situation and the tension at home. So a gentle answer turns away wrath. Now, these verses give us positive aspects of speech. The Bible also gives us negative and sometimes catastrophic effects of speech. James says, tongue can be used negatively and can cause a lot of fire. So in marriages and in family, let us know how to use our tongue. There is a story I heard that there is a man who almost committed murder because of the tongue of a woman. The husband was resting at home, and the wife had gone out, and near their fence, the neighbor was clearing the other side of the fence, of his fence. And when the wife came back home, the report she gave is that in this home I don't have a man. If I had a man in this house, what so and so is doing could not have been done. And this man woke up, thought that the lady had been beaten outside. He went out with a panga rushing to the other neighbor just because of the words of this woman. Therefore, let us always learn how to speak and what to speak and when to speak. That will greatly enhance our marriages. Let me read something here. And listen, men and women communicate differently. Not only men and women, but individuals too communicate differently. Different cultures and families also communicate differently. So because people are different, please try to understand your spouse. Let me just emphasize before I forget that God put you in the marriage where you are so that you may study and learn your spouse throughout your life. That's your job in your marriage. Try to understand the type of communication of your spouse. I've just mentioned that my wife speaks, and I have read some books and I've placed her somewhere in the categories of personalities. And I also know my personality. Knowing her personality will help me interact with her well. Do you know the personality of the person you are staying with? How do you categorize him or her? That can really help you. Take time to find out how your spouse communicates. Some of this will happen naturally in marriage, but be intentional also about it. Don't just expect good communication to happen. It is something that we develop. Observe what it is that helps you communicate clearly to your spouse in a way that makes them feel satisfied. For example, there are ladies or women are usually interested in details. That's why if I go home and try to communicate peripherally or on the face value, it doesn't make a lot of sense to her because she'd like to know the time, the details. So if I plan to communicate and know that the type of lady I have, I will try to communicate at that level. Let me say, the next thing in enhancing good communication is knowing this, that communication is beyond verbal. I started by mentioning that. This seems to be obvious, but it is the most important. You communicate a lot with your body language. Like when people are not okay at home, your body language will show in the way you are sitting, the way you are speaking to your spouse. So your body language and nonverbal language carries a lot of weight in communication. Your spouse may love to receive gifts. Learn if that is her way of communicating and do it. So nonverbal communication carries a lot of weight, just as I mentioned initially, than the verbal communication. Finally, before I open room for a question or two and a moment of interaction, know this, ladies and gentlemen, there will be nobody who will be perfect in communication. We all learn, and we're in the process of learning. Okay? So don't say that I have a husband or I have a wife who does not know how to communicate. Probably where to begin And the correct question that you can ask yourself, do I communicate well? And that makes a lot of sense. And that will help us to know that we need not attain perfection in this. We are all trying to be good communicators. Now, if we followed what we learned this afternoon, we were trying to learn on how to enhance intimacy in our relationships. And we learned that one of the ways to enhance intimacy is to communicate well. And how do we do that? We communicate well by being good what? Listeners. We communicate well by being free or open and intimate with our spouses. We communicate well by knowing when and how to speak. And we will communicate well if we know that there is no perfection in this. Ultimately, let me share with you this, that if you allow God to reign in your heart, the love of God that is poured in our hearts will overflow to other members in the family. So the greatest thing that we should seek is always the love of God to be in our lives so that we may be channels of this love to others. I remember every morning I bring my family before the throne of God. This is my habit in my family. We have family prayer in the evening. That's when we are not rushing anywhere. And so we pray together with those who are there. Many of them have gone out, but there are a few who are still there. My wife and the young one, we are still there. So we have a family prayer. We've made it a tradition in our house that whether one or two are there, there must be a time for family prayer. I'll talk about it in one of the lessons here. But I do have my personal devotion in the morning. That means I wake earlier than the other members of the family. I went somewhere and they told me that my blood pressure is high and the doctor said you must walk. So nowadays in the morning I start by walking around the campus, and then when I come back, I sit down and read my Bible and pray. And in that prayer, I am not perfect also. Sometimes I forget, sometimes it is not effective, but I remember praying for the members of my family, each one of them. And I add in that prayer, God, may you help me this day to express love to these members of my family. So intentionally, I go to my young son. I know the way I can express my love and care to the young son is to maybe play around with him and talk with him. I know my wife, she likes her way of accepting and appreciating love is by being there for her. So sometimes I just walk into the kitchen. When she's cooking, I'm doing nothing there, just standing by her, intentionally. This is what we should do in our families. Let me repeat by what I said. If there is something you should invest heavily in, and emotionally so, it is your family. May God bless you. Let me leave room for one or two questions if there is. There's a question there, yes. We'll take that, our time is up.
I don't know whether time will allow us that you answer it, but if you want, if it won't,
we can take it tomorrow.
I'd like you to save it, to answer it tomorrow. If this is in line with communication. It is, okay, members who are born in and brought up in Adventist family, you will have to forgive me for this because I didn't know about Adventist. Children of God, it is so sad that I knew about Tabia Mbaya at the age of 7. And I believe you all understand what I'm saying. And so my question, Pastor, about communication, how do I approach my little children and start speaking to them about sex? At what age should I wait and start speaking to them about it? And how do I approach the session so that they also may not be as we were? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give you my experience. I thank God because of my wife. She doesn't care. They are all boys. Huh? But she talks to them openly that sometimes I even close my my ears. Hey, I don't have that courage. But God will help you, my brother. If it is not you, I don't know your wife. Women are very good at that. They don't even fear those boys. They tell them as it is. Huh? I think there's a time, I don't know, standard 5 or 6, they come with these books and they start reading about the organs. So the wife sat them down, my wife, and explained and told them everything, the consequences, and for me, I went somewhere. I was... So that's how God has helped me. I don't know, you have different experiences. Time will not allow us today. But these people, let us not allow them, like, for us, our fathers, we didn't have those grandfathers who spoke to us. We learned them by ourselves. But let's not allow the social media to teach our children about sex. Let it come from us. And let me tell you, if you are close to your son and daughter, you are the best teacher. So the first thing that you should seek is to be close to them. And don't bombard them with something that is higher than them. It's like you are teaching algebra to standard 1, they will not understand. Wait until they reach the age when they are capable of doing what? Of understanding. For ladies, don't ask me, I don't have a girl in the house, but I know there's way to... I was in one class, and I don't know how these things happen. We were talking about sex and sex education, and one girl gave her experience. She said, I have a father. And it is my father who bought for me this Visodo. Visodo is what in English? Pad. My father is the one who bought... He taught me about menstruation period. The father taught me. And I asked him everything. My point is, let's find a way. My brother, gather courage. If your wife is not courageous, gather courage. If your wife is not courageous, but when you are gathering courage, don't teach what is not appropriate. There are different levels and different ages. These ones of ours, I think nowadays when they reach 9, they know more than we knew when we were 15 or 17. They know a lot. So the earlier you start teaching them, even the better. Okay, any other question? I saw a hand there. You wanted to comment. Somebody want? Okay. Yes, please.
Thank you, Pastor. This is just the direct one. Is it good in our families when there is a wrangle, take 1 week, 1 month without talking? It's something that's really hindering us right now. After then, you find someone has committed suicide?
Yeah. Okay. The Bible principle is let not the sun do what? Let not the sun set. Please find a way of telling your spouse that you are hurt. Okay? And when you open out the issue of being hurt, don't fight. Just tell your spouse how you feel. Are you listening to me? Yeah. Don't tell the spouse you annoyed me, you are useless, you're this and that. Speak from your perspective. Honey, this thing you did to me, and it did really do what? It did really hurt me. My point, my brother, I can also say, gather courage and solve that thing as early as what? As possible. Don't allow it to run its course. It may become huge. Solving it as early as possible is the best. Yes.
Thank you, Pastor. Just to comment first on the question you had asked.
Yes.
There's a time we went for a seminar. I think it was Justice Aluoch.
Yes.
And she told parents that, how do you handle when you're a small kid of about 8 years old, saw the dogs, when the dogs are busy, see the dogs are mannerless, and ask you what is going on? So, in fact, her perspective was, you have to answer according to their level.
Yes.
Don't try to start beating around the bush.
Yeah, according to their age. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to answer. Don't say that they are just playing.
Yeah.
You have to try and answer. But I want to ask a question and make a little comment.
Yes.
I think the question was trying to ask, what about, we are saying you should not be silent to your spouse. What about it is the spouse who is silent? You are willing to talk, you talk for 2 days alone. How do you handle it? That is one question. Then the other question I want to ask, like we agree that some spouses like a lot of details, mostly the ladies, but men do not know details. You go to a wedding, then when you come, those details, you don't know them. You are being asked, what was the color of the dress? You don't know. How do you handle that?
I'll answer the last one. Do your best. Do your best. Now, you try to speak and the other is not speaking. We have experiences here. How did you overcome? We have gone through this. We are not talking things that are in the moon. We have stayed a week, 2 weeks. How did it finally sort itself out? Anybody? His problem is, if you try talking, and the other person keeps on keeping quiet, there's an answer there. Yes, madam.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I think the most important thing is first know your spouse. Once you know the temperament of your spouse, it's very easy to deal with situations. It does not mean that when you have been married for so long, you do not have problems. Number one, know the best time that you can talk to your spouse. I have lived with my husband for so long. I am a sanguine. He knows when I am happy. Now, I can really mean to be quiet. And women, we are really good at doing that. So what happens, when I am on mute, he will not share or he will not want to solve it at that time. That one will not help because I'll still be on mute. So when Tabitha will be smiling, he'll be like, you know what, Tabitha? When you do this, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
But when you do this, it makes me feel good. Right? So when you do that, you will know the best time to be talking to your spouse. And by the way, Pastor, men can also be really good at going mute. These men can also go mute. So, Elder, once you know that Mama Churchill, I'm not saying she does that. But when she is not happy, when she's not happy, don't try to sort it out. Because we have attitudes, And then I wanted to also comment about when you want to talk to a little girl about sex. These kids listen. Most of the times we assume they do not know. Go to the level of your child. If your child is that short, just kneel down and talk to them and say, hey, you know what? For you to come into the world, mommy and daddy were involved. Because if you don't talk to them, they're going to know it in another forum, which won't be good. That is my opinion.
Thank you very much. I think we can stop it there so that we don't eat into, it's a burning one. Why, can it stay up to tomorrow? The bell was rung long ago. Let's preserve it. You are saying that he should ask? Okay, a comment. Let's please give. And that should be the last one. We have gone beyond time.
Thank you, Pastor.
Yes.
Mine you can even answer tomorrow if you can't answer it today. Now, you talked about being open.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, how open should open be? Then, the last question.
Yes.
We have names that we've given our spouses. Names. These are nicknames. You can call them pseudonames. You can call them. Others will call them my investor, Posho Mail, all kinds of names. My wallet. What of if your wife is used to a certain name that you normally call her with? And then one day you come home with a surprise name because you want to express love. And then the reaction you get is a shocker. How do you recollect yourself as a man to be able to go back to your usual self?
Okay, thank you very much, my friend Peter. What we will do, we will start with that in our lesson tomorrow. Let's come again tomorrow and have a session. A question too? Okay, okay. Why don't we do this tomorrow? Let's do it tomorrow. Thank you very much. May God bless you. Shall we stand up for a word of prayer? Loving Father, we've had a session on how to enhance communication in our families. You love families, dear Lord. And so it is our prayer that the families at Victory may have vibrant marriages, may have peace and love and joy in their homes. We commit the programs of this day to you. May you guide us through, because we pray in Jesus' name.